And there we go, everyone. We are back again for another fantastic and gruesome conversation on Friday Night Counter Attack for me, especially this week. It's a lovely day. It's been lovely weather this week, and it's been an awful week for a Manchester United fan. We're losing in behind closed doors friendlies against Burnley. We're losing away at Tottenham. Harry Maguire is still here at the club, and it's not been great in terms of our performances on the pitch as well. It looks like we've spent around 120 million pounds and got worse over the summer. So I'm going to continue that narrative because they're not even playing any better than what we've seen previously, which ain't great at all. But what is great is our special guest that we've got today. So before we introduce our special guest, I introduce our co-host as always. Travis, it's good to see you, my friend. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. A little bit achy after foot golf yesterday, but we move.
We move indeed. That was a crazy game of foot golf, and we're going to be talking about that in the next couple of weeks as well, which will be good fun. Sukhi, good to see you again, my friend. Thanks for coming to foot golf yesterday. Did you enjoy yourself? Sukhi's on mute. There we go.
So, dude, so yeah, amazing foot golf session yesterday with lads. So yeah, great to see many more to join us soon in the future. It'll be great.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be good fun indeed. And yeah, our special guests, we've got two very special guests today. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot about them in this early part of the podcast. First of all, we've got Grace Merritt joining us today. So Grace is someone who, unfortunately for me, is a Liverpool fan, but she's got quite an extraordinary journey in terms of how she's kind of making match days at Anfield her own. So Grace, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and to our guests in terms of what you're kind of doing with Matchday Gab and everything you've got going on so far?
Yeah, no worries. So hello everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name is Grace and I'm originally from Barcelona, but I moved to Liverpool when I was 5. And yeah, I'll tell you the story from along there. So I'm a host and a presenter and I do my own match days, but I'm also being accepted for the Stephen Gerrard Academy when I'm doing sports media. And basically how it come about was last year I went on a documentary for BBC and it was involving the Champions League and what went wrong with it. So Layla Wright, the producer of it, she was like, oh, can you say your piece and stuff like that? And I love like the production, being a part with the football media. And because I've always loved the industry, it's just always been my favourite thing, going the matches since I was 2 till like going home and away. And yeah, it's the best. And with the Matchday Garb, we speak to fans like from literally everywhere, and we bring each other together because we've got fans from literally worldwide. So it's nice to like get their opinions, what they're up to, how where they found to be a Liverpool fan and what comes here. And then also I'm a partnership with it's called the Sunday Walk, and basically it's a men's mental health. So after Paris, a lot of people suffered with the mental health badly, where they wouldn't go to games, where they couldn't speak, they couldn't communicate. But I made sure that everyone got together. We were able to raise money for people and, fund a lot of stuff back to them, in regards to, trips that they did pay on and stuff like that. But yeah, it's nice to, help people and make sure that they've got a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Friday Night Counter Attack, we're coming up to our 3rd anniversary in October, and this started during the pandemic in terms of getting people's voices on in terms of men's mental health, because what brings men's mental health together than anything but football, really. And that's how people get to talk about their feelings on their team, their emotions, and they get to really talk about it in the open as opposed to like texting and writing. And with everything, it doesn't really release it as well as talking about it. And just like with your Sunday walk that you're doing, it's just great work that you're doing out in Liverpool. And especially congratulations with your Stephen Gerrard Academy as well, Grace. It looks like you're killing it right now in Liverpool, which is crazy to see.
Yeah.
We'll be seeing you on Sky Sports soon, which will be crazy. But no, nicely done there, Grace. Fingers crossed, it'll be good. Someone else who hopefully will be on Sky Sports soon or BBC Sports soon. This is a nice moment for me because back in May, I got to go to a Raise Your Game conference with Kick It Out at the Emirates Stadium, and I got to have a couple of meetings with a few different people who were considered mentors at this event. For someone like me who's looking to get further and further in the football media industry, I had a mentor, one like 3 or 4 I had, and one of them was Joshua. So Joshua, if you'd like to introduce yourself, besides being my mentor and me being your favorite mentee, what is it you're doing in football media and how are you going about it so far? So welcome, Joshua, to the podcast, and I'm glad you took the time to take it to have a conversation with us today.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the show. So I'm Joshua Donkor. I'm a freelance commentator, mainly for BBC Sports, a lot of Final Score, a lot of Women's Super League on 5 Live Sports Extra, cover the Premier League for Sky's News Radio, and World Feed for EFL. So those are kind of my companies that I dawdle in every weekend, midweek, going to grounds, Stockley Park, where the referees are. And yeah, I've been commentating now freelance for best part of 6 years. Been the BBC now for 7, and yeah, just trying to build up to hopefully be do Premier League week by week, full 90s really. So
you were the one at Stockley Park on the weekend that gave Alexis McAllister the red card then?
I wasn't there on Saturday. I was at Reading Stevenage. I wish I was at Stockley Park and I would have told him not to overturn it. But no handlings with the referees.
No, that's all good. You're not sneaking into the VAR room just in case.
No. I haven't got the uniform. They all wear the EA Sports uniform, shorts, socks, leggings, and everything. So a referee when you see them.
They have to wear that at Stockley Park as well.
Yeah. And they all come in their meetings and having their coffees and that. It's quite funny. Yeah.
That's good to hear that. But no, Joshua, keep doing what you're doing as well. It's great to
Thank
hear.
you.
And I'm looking forward to your thoughts on this week's podcast, which will be great fun. And we're going to start off with Grace, actually. We're going to talk about how basically with Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool Football Club, how they're kind of doing this season so far. You're missing quite a lot of midfielders. You're missing quite a lot of experience in that team as well. But you've kind of got off to a good start, 4 points so far as well, doing really well against Chelsea. That was a really attacking side. The Bournemouth game was a good comeback at home at Anfield as well. I just want to know your first thoughts on how Jurgen Klopp can strengthen the side before the end of the summer transfer window, Grace.
Yeah, so Liverpool have been hit and miss since last season. Obviously, the season before, we were 1 point away of winning the Premier League. And that's been a lot of rebuilds, a restructure. We're bringing a lot of new players on. And I don't think that we haven't at the time where we've been able to have one-on-one, actual coaching and getting them to where they want to be. So Liverpool at the minute with this season, pre-season, they did really good. Going over to Singapore, they beat Leicester. They obviously lost to Munich, but a sort of skillful side. Last season, what we lacked in was the youth players. I always make this comment is that in our midfield, we had Thiago, we've got Fabinho, these older, so knowledgeable, very skillful, but you need that pace there as well. So a younger player from Brighton, you've got the Bournemouth, you've got Brentford, all these younger players that they brought through, they're going to outrun Thiago in a heartbeat. So with Jurgen, he hasn't really had the help from FSG to, build a side. But what Jurgen believes in is that he brings these players on. So, for example, when we brought Jota, I think he was about, I can't remember, I think it was like 13 million for him for Wolves. And we were like, why have we bought him? And he's just grown. And with Klopp's mentorship, it's making people who they actually are. Nunes, last season, he had hardly any chances, but he was always so knowledgeable of the ball and where to put it, but he was never taking that chances in.
Just on Darwin Núñez as well, we spoke about him last week in terms of how he can settle into the season so far with Liverpool. And because you've got so many attackers there, is there a position that you think, because Travis and Sukhi and I, we spoke about it last week of where his best position is. Some of us think left wing, some of us think number 9, but as we know with Jurgen Klopp, he doesn't really play the number 9 anymore, playing the false 9. But where do you think Darwin Núñez's best position is in this Liverpool side currently?
Probably, as you said, I'd say left wing, because he's got this shirt on that was Firmino's number 9, and he's not living up to it. It's even come with the season that he's only playing for 10 minutes, when we knew last season he was playing in, out, and constant. And I feel like when we've signed Szoboszlai, we've got McAllister, we've got Merritt.
How do you say his name? How do you say his name?
Szoboszlai.
Dominic Szoboszlai.
Szoboszlai.
There we go.
We say it different because when I went to the
Is it a Scouse thing that you have to say it in a certain way?
we've got it because like boss, do you know when Scousers say boss, like that's boss. So like it's just exaggerated to say boss instead. Do you get what I mean?
It sounds like a cop out, but I'll give you that one. Szoboszlai.
Yeah, so like McAllister and Szoboszlai have been like amazing how they brought on, and then when McAllister got that red card, I don't know what used for it, but literally 50-50, it was well been a yellow card, not a red card at all. So
All I'm saying is if that was Casemiro or Granit Xhaka last season, that's a straight red. I think it was just down to they're trying to stay consistent with these high foots now as well, which ain't great at all. But nicely done there, Grace. Travis, talk to me about Liverpool as well, especially after what Grace said as well. Do they still need a holding midfielder or two, or do you reckon Jurgen Klopp's got it in the bag for this season to challenge for that top 5 position?
They definitely need a holding midfielder for sure. I think not so much against Bournemouth at the weekend, but the first game of the season against Chelsea, they were just so open. Obviously, they've signed Endo, haven't they, from Stuttgart? Correct me if I'm wrong. He might solve that problem, but he's 30 years old. He's going to be a stopgap at best. So I think they probably do need a long-term option, but who that is anybody's guess, really.
Joshua Da Silva. Isn't that right, Joshua? Go to Brentford. Get Joshua Da Silva or Matthias Jensen from Brentford. He's a quality player, I think he is. But Joshua, what do you think about their alternatives?
For Liverpool?
For Liverpool, who would you get in as a holding midfielder?
Oh, I think they should have paid the money for Romeo Lavia. I think it's a big mistake there. I think for Liverpool, there's a real identity crisis in the sense of how they want to play. I know it's very evident to get a DM, but they had one in Fabinho last year who sort of lost his legs and he's moved on now to Saudi Arabia. But what made Jurgen Klopp's team so good the last 4 years, the energy, Wijnaldum, even Milner coming in, chipping in, Henderson, Fabinho. They have an amazing attack on paper and it connects, Jota, Diaz and Salah. The market's really, really tough for central defensive midfielders. Initially, the beginning of the window, it was all about Bellingham and getting Jude, and Jude will kind of fix the problems. And I thought we're looking at Jurgen Klopp to try and find a solution within. I think the Endo signing makes sense. You want someone that's steady, sort of not on the same caliber for what we've seen anyway in his career. That's not just comparison, but something that Man United did last year, bought Casemiro and put the plaster in, we'll solve the problem. 9 times out of 10, Liverpool will do what they did on Saturday. They'll beat teams in the below the half. But at Stamford Bridge, you'll see that you need that defensive cover. But do you bring in a Curtis Jones? Do you bring in a Harvey Elliott? And I just think Liverpool have missed their profile of a player. The defensive midfield is a tough place to recruit. We are struggling as Man United, and Chelsea have gone and purchased 2 the best available good youngsters. I mean, Moses Caicedo, yes, he gave away the penalty on Sunday. But in this current market, he's worth the money. I'm sorry, he's worth it because it's a game changer. It's you pay the money, you get the player. And if Liverpool got Moses Caicedo, then they're right back into the picture of Premier League and finishing top 4. And that's a game changing sign. At the moment, they're left with a player that's unknown from Stuttgart, because a week ago I didn't know who he was. And Grace, did you know who he was? I'm not sure.
Everyone knew who Endo was because when they play Football Manager or FIFA, they know Endo, and they know him from the World Cup as well. So that's just you, Joshua. Don't put that on us. Don't put that on us. We all knew about Endo.
I didn't know it. I didn't know.
That's good to hear.
My bad.
That's okay. That's all good. And Sukhi, just to finalize our thoughts on Liverpool as well. We spoke last week about Darwin Núñez. We spoke last week about Mohamed Salah turning up as well. But realistically speaking, is there any other position that Liverpool need to kind of strengthen in? Or do you reckon Trent Alexander-Arnold could do a job in centre mid if they then buy a right back, for example?
I mean, it's tough, Hamz. I think from what we spoke about last week midfield's key for Liverpool, and we've said that all last season. They got overrun constantly every game. Towards the second half, you could just see them going. And I think one thing I wanted to kind of critique was they were willing to spend 110 million on Caicedo. what's stopping them from signing 3 players for 40 mil from outside the Premier League to find some youngsters to play in the midfield? So I'm a bit stuck here where they had money to go and spend, and now they've been told they're not going to spend anything. It's a bit of an awful, really. I feel sorry for Grace really for this one, because you're just a bit unsure now. Like, are they actually signing a player, or are they just going to leave it and wait till Jan? But like Joshua said, just emphasize that point. It's hard to find CDM now. It's tough, so you're going to have to explore. And I think ending up with Endo probably wasn't their kind of first or second or third choice. It's just going to make things more tough for Liverpool. And I think we're going to see that now being a common pattern towards Jan if they don't sign on one, is that their midfield struggles are just going to have to continue. But playing Trent in that CDM position, I mean, he's great, don't get me wrong, but trying to get him to focus on the defensive attribute of his side of his game, it's going to be tough for him, just for himself, when he's got 2 kind of number 8s pressing on. So it's a tough position for Liverpool at the moment.
Yeah, sticky situation, I guess. And Grace, just to finalise on this topic of Liverpool, because we will get back to you later on the podcast with your matchday preview against Newcastle United. What's your expectations for Liverpool this season so far? And do you expect them to crack on with the signings they've made, or do you reckon it will be kind of a steady season for you? Just first impressions.
Yeah, so as we know, we've lost 7 players, like all these players that have been here for quite a lot of time. And as we know, in the Premier League, maybe not so us being in the Europa, we need that experience. We need to know who we are playing, because we are bringing, McAllister. At the end of the day, we're winning it with Argentina, had a really good season with Brighton. And I feel like he's got quite a lot of potential, but we've lost 7 and only signed 2. We really need to get. We've obviously got Enzo, and I went to Bournemouth, and he was very shaky, very nervous, and that's just the debut. I think he's got so much more. But I just want to comment what Joshua said. I feel like he's 30. We need a long term. We need someone that's got youth. And maybe even bringing some of the youngsters, like we've got Bento, we've got Tyler Morton back, and get them into the cup games, get them into more experience. So I feel like I want to finish top 4 this season. I've got nothing to worry about Europa. I just feel like someone could spring up. Like we didn't know about Newcastle, how amazing that they've done. But I feel like as Champions League football gonna complicate everything for them. So if you got 2 more signings at least, I'd be a bit more comfortable. That's because we're not paying 100%.
I mean, there is a player at Manchester United called Scott McTominay. So if you did want to spend 50 million on a defensive midfielder, Grace, I'm sure Eric Ten Hag would want to sell a midfielder off to Liverpool. He wouldn't mind that rivalry for that sale at all. But no, nicely done there, Grace. Thanks to you, everyone, for this part of our Liverpool topic. And now it's on to the bit where I don't really want to talk about, but I know Sukhi and Travis have been waiting all week long to be talking about this bit. It's our reaction to Manchester United versus Spurs at White Hart Lane. And I'm just going to say it. I don't need to say it because I said it at the beginning of the podcast and I said it last week. Like, our midfield is just going to be overrun. And Grace, I'm pretty sure you've dodged the bullet by not signing Mason Mount and going for Alexis McAllister there. So thumbs up for Jurgen Klopp for that as well. Nicely done. Unfortunately, Mason Mount is injured until the international break, which isn't great at all. And I don't wish anyone bad on my point of view, from a Man United point of view. But Joshua, talk to me about Anthony, because with Anthony, I want to kind of hear your thoughts, because there's been a few players that have come and gone at Manchester United where we spent big money. They've been in for a while. They've done okay-ish, and then they've not really kind of carried on in their hype or in their potential that they have. You said earlier about Moises Caicedo being a great signing for 117 million. We signed Anthony for around 89 million with add-ons leading up to 100 million pounds.
Yeah.
There are times where players are doing quite bad at the moment for Manchester United. We've seen Rashford in quite a bit of bad form, playing as a striker, clearly not his best position. We've seen Bruno Fernandes out of form. We've seen Casemiro out of form, who's a bit leggy in midfield and kind of isolated as well. But with those 3 players, for example, they've kind of got things to fall back on. Marcus Rashford with the 30 goals last season, Bruno Fernandes with the goals, the assists, the chances creation last season as well, and Casemiro being the 5-time Champions League winner. When they're having bad games, they have things to fall back on. But what does Anthony have to kind of fall back on after another performance that was really bad at Tottenham? Because at 1-0 down, we had a chance straight away afterwards where Anthony was one-on-one with the keeper, and instead of just slotting it into the goal, he hits the post. And he was like, we had these clear-cut chances in pre-season. He still couldn't finish them. He can't do them in the big games. Is it time to worry about Antony, do you think, Joshua?
Yeah, I think the signs have been there from last season. He started really well in terms of statistically 3-3, first ever Premier League Man United player to score in his first 3 games. If you think about all the great players we had in the 90s and the early noughties to have that, you're thinking, okay, maybe there's a player there, especially because the manager's top forward target last summer was Antony. Yeah, he wanted him over Gakpo last summer. We overpaid heavily. And I think if you look about the last 10 years post-Fergie, in regards to our signings, I think pound for pound, he probably could be our worst, if I'm being honest with you. But in terms of the impact, the money we've paid,
even more than Maguire and Di Maria.
Yeah, but Maguire's played well in United games and he's contributed to things. Under Gunnar Solskjaer, he was never going to be worth 80 million, Maguire. And most of these players like Declan Rice and Carsey are not worth that amount that's been paid for them, but they can still do a job. And I think Maguire's done the job. He's not going to be in the same bracket as, say, a Van Dijk or a Ruben Diaz and all these defenders this current era. But for Antony, offers absolutely nothing. He plays every game. Palestri comes on and creates a penalty opportunity. Every time Palestri comes on, he plays. You see something. It's down to the manager, in my opinion, because you keep on playing the same person that you bought from Ajax. I look at the coach, and we'll go into that, I'm sure, later in terms of later in the show about Man United in a whole. But Antony, I don't see how it can improve. Defenders are starting to realise. I think there was a moment in the Wolves game where the commentator, the defender, and everybody in the crowd was so surprised that he cut in on his right foot, or he crossed the ball on his right foot, and it's like, oh, you can actually do that. And
I was at the ground and I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? He went on the outside, not the inside.
Professional football has been playing football now for plus 10 years. So, that right foot probably is not going to be developed enough. And that's a major issue. For example, if you look at Liverpool's front three in that game against Chelsea, second half.
You look at the benchmark of a right winger.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, in Mo Salah.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say. Mo Salah,
gold standard right there.
Oh, it was fantastic. You look at the ball in, he should have had a goal if he was onside. And that's him, look at Salah's numbers last year, and that's in a poor, season for him. He always contributes. Yeah. Whereas in Antony, the numbers statistically are low, his output are low. Sometimes you get forwards who don't get goals and assists, but you know what they can bring to the team. He brings nothing. Listen, I think he's probably one of the poorest attackers in the Premier League, if I'm being honest with you.
Grace, would you agree with that? Antony, one of the worst attackers in the top 6, or in the Premier League, I should say.
I think Premier League, top 6 is kind.
Oh, okay. Nicely done. Grace, what do you think about Antony? Grace, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Rookie error. It's okay.
Yeah, I do fully agree with you. I feel like how much he's worth and like how he's been playing in that, he hasn't contributed to like any game whatsoever.
Good to hear that, and unfortunately it's bad for me and Joshua to hear that as well. Now it's time to hear from the two gleaming guys supporting Tottenham Hotspur. Travis, take it away. Talk to me. How good was Sarr? How good was Bissouma? You warned us last week they were good at Brentford. Richarlison still hasn't hit the ground running in this Ange system, but take it away, my friend. How good was that midfield, like you predicted and like we all predicted would overrun Manchester United, and you went to town with us in the second half? How was that, Travis?
It was the most fun I've had watching a Tottenham Hotspur team since the Pochettino days, really.
No more YouTube for you, my friend. You're happy with it. You can watch it live every weekend.
Yeah, I'll never have to watch that Ajax game highlights again. But no, you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah, it was just so enjoyable. The midfield battle, I think, was key. United did have chances. I think against a better team, we probably would have conceded a couple of goals. I think it says volumes that we had more trouble defending against Brentford last week than we did against Man United.
And that's not even you being nice about it as well. Those are facts. They had more shots on goal than, I think we had 25 shots on goal than you, and I think 6 were on target, which is how bad it was. So
that's exactly it. Yeah, there was plenty more shots in total from United, but on target, I think we both had 6 shots on target, which is not a great record. But yeah, like you say, midfield were great. Udogie looked fantastic again. The goalkeeper, Vicario, looked unbelievable. He was just so confident and assured. And I think it's ironic saying it considering who's left this summer, but I think if we had a striker in this team, a really good striker, we'd be cooking, because the defense looks like they've got themselves sorted. The midfield looks like we've got just unbelievable amounts of quality. On both the wings, we've got good players as well. It's just that number 9 position, isn't it?
The one that got away at the wrong time, which is crazy. Sukhi, talk to me. I mean, you've been backing Richarlison ever since Ange's kind of come in, and then since Harry Kane has gone as well. I'm not going to talk about him today. I'm going to talk about how Kulusevski has kind of fit into. Basically, we're talking about right wingers so far with Ante, with Mo Salah, but with Kulusevski, Maddison, and Son Heung-min, is that still a front three behind Richarlison, behind the number 9, that can still create problems against any type of team, against the Jurgen Klopp team, against the Pep Guardiola team, against especially Mikel Arteta as well? Let me hear your thoughts on that, Sukhi.
Oh yeah, that most definitely. I mean, you look at these players; they're very dynamic and they're very interchangeable in their positions. So Kulo, you can play through the middle, you can play left, Maddis can go to the right. But I think what you saw in the United game, kind of emphasizing the point what you just said there, was Maddis was being more. So I see that link-up play between the two. They just kept overbearing Wan-Bissaka and just overloading that kind of left-hand side. So I think with the front three, that Maddis and obviously Son and Kulo, you'll see them kind of chop change throughout the game. Something's working well. Or let's say we need to drop 2 number 10s into the positions and leave 1 further out wide. You know what I mean? Ange's got a really kind of good system there where he can interchange it whenever needed. And I think what's happened in that game against United in the second half, you saw Maddison drift more out the left and try to attack with Son. And I think with the 2 wingers sticking right on the byline, you could see that Wan-Bissaka was getting straight away from the centre back, and that opened a lot of space for us. And I think what we saw with the 2 goals that we had came through on that side. So I think with Ange, with the players that he's got, very interchangeable. And I think with Solomon being on the bench as well, another player that can be interchangeable, playing right, playing left, or playing in the middle. But I think we've got to give him, especially with Richarlison in that system, because I don't think he gets the service that he needs. But I think just give it a bit more time, let it embed into the system, and you'll start seeing more goals. And I think for him, he'll start earning his confidence when he plays against the kind of like bottom half of the team table, and score a couple of goals and then try and kick start from there. What you see is like last week, he's not like a typical target man striker. He's more like off the kind of into the channels, off the centre back, running in behind. But just got to give him time yet, and I think he'll come good.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear that as well. But yeah, one player I want to talk about, and this is kind of our start bench of the week. Travis was very vocal about Vicario being their new number 1 after Hugo Lloris has kind of left Spurs after a good number of years serving them as their goalkeeper and as their club captain as well. Vicario, Joshua, I think was amazing in that game, especially when you're talking about the save he made against Casemiro, his commanding presence in the box as well. And I think there's a lot more to come from Vicario. But realistically speaking, we have to have a start bench cell of the week, including Vicario. So this is for everyone playing, everyone at home listening in, you can play along as well. So start bench cell of the week is going to be Andre Onana, Manchester United's keeper. We're going to go for Vicario from Spurs, and we're going to go for another new keeper in Roberto Sanchez. Grace Alisson is already too good, so we're not going to put him in because everyone will be starting Alisson. So don't worry about Alisson. He's on a different level completely. But you know what, Joshua, talk to us. Who's your start bench? So, do you think Andre Onana is a real deal for Manchester United after replacing?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with Onana. I think Vicario had a really good, solid home debut. He looked weak against Brentford. Everybody was talking about Onana's penalty claim against Wolves, but in the Brentford game, I can't remember who the striker was. I think it was Shad. In the second half, ran on and Vicario took him out. There was no cause for a penalty there. So it looked like a shaky debut for him. But in the second game, it was fantastic. Calm and assured, good saves. Even the Rashford one where Ante actually does something and slips him in. It's a good save at his near post. And that can go through him. So I think Vicario will grow into it. We still need to see, how he's like with the ball, on the ball. He's probably stronger with his shot saving. He had a weak pre-season. I'm sure the Tottenham boys will agree with that. Some of the saves weren't tidy from him. So I would go Onana. Champions League experience, Champions League final experience, very good. The pass he played for Garnacho in the game. If Garnacho looks up, he can find a play that can lead to a goal. And he made some good saves also when Spurs cut us open. I would put on the bench Vicario, and I would sell Robert Sanchez. I'm astonished that Chelsea have gone and purchased Robert Sanchez. If you look at the goals that Chelsea have conceded in both their games, you look at the Diaz goal for Liverpool, he should know where he's putting that. He's outstretching his leg. The Mikel Antonio goal, he's right-footed. Where else can he smash the ball in when he's running on? So yeah, I've never rated Robert Sanchez anyway, so that's an easy one for me to sell him.
Nah, that's okay. Agree or disagree, Travis? What are we going for?
I'd love to back my guy Vicario, but how can you not start the goalkeeper who played in the Champions League final last season? So yeah, totally agree. I think one of the best moments for Man United from the game at the weekend, although there weren't many, was a pass that Onana made from the edge of his own box right out to, I believe, Garnacho on the left wing.
Yeah.
Just completely cut out the whole Tottenham team. Garnacho's in fields of space. And the key difference with Onana and De Gea is you never would have seen that from De Gea. It just wouldn't have happened. So yeah, I would start Onana, definitely. I think Vicario will have more of a shout against him by the end of the season. But yeah, I'd start Onana, bench Vicario. And again, I completely agree with everything Joshua said about Sanchez. You know, the fact that Chelsea have spent actual Great British pounds on a goalkeeper who lost his place in the team to Jason Steele last season just speaks volumes about how crazy their transfer strategy is. So yeah, start Onana, bench Vicario, sell Sanchez.
Agree or disagree, Sukhi? Any changes in that?
No, literally, Travis got it spot on there. I'll do the exact same points. I think the Sanchez, like Joshua said, it was just so outrageous. They spent 20 mil on a keeper that got dropped by Jason Steele, of all goalkeepers at Brighton, right? And I think Onana, his record speaks for itself, but like a good case for that is that Vicario's first season, embed him in, and hopefully we might be having a bit of a shout between Onana versus Vicario towards the end. But again, with Onana, with that kind of system that United are trying to play, you've got the perfect goalkeeper for that. It's just a shame that your midfielders are not receptive enough to receive the ball on the halfway line when he's ready to pass it to them. So hopefully they come good at some point. But yeah, you've got to go with that.
Nicely done. Grace, you're probably looking at us thinking, how sad are these guys talking about goalkeepers when we've got one of the best goalkeepers in world football? These lot are living in 2017 when we had a goalkeeper that can play out from the back. Would you make any changes from that start bench? So who would you go for, Grace? You're still on mute again.
Sorry, I need to stop doing that. That's a lot of editing to get on. But yeah, I wish I could disagree with everyone because it's nice to have your own opinions. But Onana, like, he's unbelievable, and the amount of experience, like, for example, Alisson's the same. I can see some similarities, and I feel like the more he develops, the more he's with the team, it'll be great. But like, I saw rumours today about maybe he could go back to his Cameroon national team, so that would be like a really big loss for you. Sanchez, can't say nothing good. I just don't think he's that good. But like, as I say with Liverpool, we're so lucky to have Alisson because defensive wise and goalie wise, we've never had, like, Dudek was the only, you know, he saved us that, but we've never had an Alisson. And yeah, I agree with everyone else.
Nah, that's good to hear. And with Andre Onana as well, when compared to some of the Premier League goalkeepers, the data shows that Onana has a better save percentage than both Alisson and Ederson. Compared to his time in the Serie A. Obviously, Alisson was bought from the Serie A. Obviously, he was at Roma before Liverpool bought him, and it goes to show that sometimes buying keepers from abroad will always be a better thing. Sometimes buying keepers from the Premier League with Robert Sanchez as well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot more from Vicario, and hopefully he can be a mainstay in this Spurs side going forward. But like you said, if Onana does go back into the Cameroon national side, that might mean we lose him for the African Cup of Nations. So that is a big miss for Manchester United as well, because there's a big drop off from Andre Onana to Tom Heaton, or Andre Onana to Dean Henderson, who might be on his way out as our backup keeper as well. But again, as Travis said earlier,
is he still being played in Jan?
It's still being played in Jan, yeah. Yeah. So you might lose Sarr as well, and a couple of other players for you guys as well. Senegal, which would be crazy.
I think if like Mo Salah keeps getting put on the bench, and like if he hasn't had his performance well, I think Klopp will consider him, like putting him as a sub at each game, and he'll just go right to Saudi. I can just see that coming. Really.
No way. Imagine him playing for Gerrard and Henderson in the same team. It's like he never left Liverpool.
Exactly, it's crazy, isn't it? It's like a domino effect, and like I don't know if you talk about Saudi Arabia and like the football that's gonna happen with there. We know Saudi Arabia at the minute, they are famous for the oil rigs. You know, they've got this trillions amount of money, and now they're turning that into tourism. So now they're bringing, you know, loads of Liverpool players, the Ronaldos, the Messis, and everything like that. And I feel like Saudi Arabia, it won't be a history of, you know, look what we've won. It's going to be quite a history of Greece. I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but.
All I'm saying is I'm out there trying to get a job in Saudi Arabia in football media as well.
Okay.
So we're trying to take Friday Night Counter Attack to Saudi Arabia. You've heard it here first. I'm joking. You've not heard it here first. So it's one of those things that it's one of those things that, because we've said it previously as well in the summer, that before, when it was like England as like the mainstay of the richest league in world football, for someone else to come along and do that, we've seen it with Russia for a bit. We've seen it in a few countries like Spain, for example, as well. Seen it in China. China never really lasted long. But with Saudi Arabia as well, the fact that now you've got loads of players wanting to go over there to start afresh, it just means more development for English players. And I think that's the benefit personally, because you're going to have more youngsters coming through, more youngsters representing, and it means the development of a national side as well. And the best thing is, when you're seeing that from a Liverpool point of view, a Man United point of view, a Spurs point of view, who already developed their own players, it means other teams around, like your Evertons, like your Luton Towns, for example, they'll be developing more players instead of buying them as well. And it goes to show how much football will develop from there as well. And we saw that when China came through, but a lot of players from England developed because people are going off to China, to the USA, because they will need players at the end of the day. And hopefully they'll need football hosts who can speak Arabic like yours truly. So hopefully that comes about soon, which would be good.
That's a really good point there, definitely.
Yeah, as a lot of people want to put negative spins on it, there's a lot of positives, and it goes to show that there's always different ways to look at it, different lenses to look through, which will be good fun. But I don't think Mohamed Salah will go to Saudi Arabia. If he does, I'll definitely message you, Grace. I'm like, you were right. You were right as well. But yeah, that was probably the easiest start bench sell of this season so far, which ain't too bad. Now it's time for Scout Hamz, where I get to talk about my favorite wonder kid of the week, and for everyone to kind of been watching over the season as goes by. For our guests that don't know what it is, it's basically where I like call out a youngster across Europe or across world football, and then within 2-3 months they become like big superstars because I've been watching them from afar. So it's happened with Darwin Núñez, Grace. It's happened with Anthony, unfortunately, Joshua as well. So let's see what I've got with this one. So this week I'm going to be talking to you guys all about Andreas Schjelderup. So he's a Norwegian international who's been playing in the Danish league, who recently transferred over to Benfica. So he's got 6 caps for the Norwegian youth teams as well, uncapped at men's level so far as well. He's a left winger, and he can play as a striker and as an attacking midfielder as well. He made his debut in the Danish league at 16 years of age, £9 million transfer to Benfica. And I'm thinking he's going to be one of these new Benfica players where we've seen time and time again, they buy these youngsters from across the world, like we've seen with Brighton now, who are doing it so commonly in the Premier League. Benfica have been doing it for years. They'll buy youngsters from around the world, and they'll turn up into global superstars, and they'll turn up into really expensive sales for them as well. Darwin Núñez was a big one. We've seen Angel Di Maria, David Luiz, Ramirez. The list will go on. And I keep saying, Sukhi, you need to keep reminding me, man. We need to do a whole podcast on how Portuguese football sells so many big players from South America onto the world. And that's crazy from them in terms of what they do. I'm definitely thinking Andreas will be another one of these players going forward as well, which will be good fun. But yeah, next part of the podcast is our Premier League player focus. So this is where our video editors get to choose for us players to talk about on this week's podcast. So now we've got 2 to talk about, really. We normally would have 3, but we've got 2. One is Bryan Mbeumo from Brentford, and one of them I'll mention later on just to keep it moving. But Grace, talk to us about Bryan Mbeumo, Brentford winger, French international as well, coming up to it, and he's like 22, 23 years old. We saw Manchester City were linked with Jeremy Doku, potentially going for a deal by the end of the week as well. Would Bryan Mbeumo make it into a top 6 side with the form that he's had over the last year and a bit? What do you think, Grace?
Yeah, so I have seen him play, and I feel like he is very skillful, very young, and being able to, develop and play in the Premier League, and he's French. And I think with him doing international football, that would be good. So for him to be at Brentford, these teams, like when Tottenham was playing Brentford, they drew, didn't they? And when I saw them play, I was like, oh my God, unbelievable. But I feel like, yeah, he could be like a good signing for Man City if they're able to.
Yeah, definitely. And Sukhi, talk to me a bit about how, obviously we've spoken about Ivan Toney not being there at Brentford until January. Bryan Mbeumo scored 3 goals in 2 games already this season. Is he going to be taking most of the goal scoring responsibility? Him and Wissa up front. What do you reckon about that, Sukhi?
Oh, and without doubt, I think when you watch Brentford play, they play with a 5 at the back, flat 5, and then a 3-2, and you're seeing Mbeumo and Wissa playing up top. But I think there was an interesting start. I don't know if Travis remembers it when the game kicked off on Sky Sports, that without Ivan Toney, they've only lost 1 game without him. So playing Wissa and Mbeumo does work in that kind of formation. So, but the thing is with players like that, like Mbeumo, it depends on the system playing. I think if you put him in City where it's more possession based, will you see the same type of player? It's different. I think it's the same when you see other big players that come in. They've got the physical attributes to play and push up the pitch. They've got pace, or they've got amazing hold up play. But could they do it in a City kind of tactical team, or could they do it with United? It's always a bigger what if and what they can do. So when you're saying with players like that, into politics, they're not, because you can see sometimes you get flops, you get some people that are really good that hit the ground running, and it is a kind of question mark about what if. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know what his age is, but he's like 26, 27?
No, it's like 22, 23. He's quite young still.
24. He's about
24.
3 weeks older than me.
That's a way to remember it, Travis.
I mean, there you go.
Done.
There you go. It's another interesting one. If he did like 2 years and then he made that big move to like you say, like City, it could happen, right? And I think just watching him against against Tottenham, and you can ask Travis this, he absolutely ran us ragged, didn't he? The way that they kept hoofing the ball up top, and he just gave problems to Mickey van der Ven. So he's definitely a quality player, and I think when you look at Brentford this season, he's going to score a lot more out their goals. And I think with Wissa holding up the ball, getting those flick-ons and those headers, you're going to see Mbeumo score a lot more. And I reckon he does get to 10 Prem goals, I reckon, this season. We'll definitely see it.
What do you think, Travis? Is this the season for Bryan Mbeumo to turn up?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think he had a great season last season, to be fair. We were looking, I was looking at him a little bit earlier on today, obviously in preparation for the pod today. And I'd always assumed that the reason that he'd not been even linked with a big move since Brighton got to the Prem was that he was a bit older. I assumed he was sort of 29, 30, something like that.
You just looked at his beard.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, he doesn't look 24, does he? That's exactly it. But yeah, he's 24, just turned 24 as well a couple of weeks ago. He's not old at all. And it does make me wonder, the players that are at these bigger clubs at the minute, in those positions on the wing. We mentioned Anthony and the troubles that he's had, and obviously City have lost Mahrez this summer as well. It does make me wonder whether a team like City or United or someone like that should take a punt on him. I think he's been fantastic since he came to the Prem, and I think to play in Toney's shadow and play so well is really impressive. I mean, I'd take him at Tottenham. I'd snap your hands off for him. I think if he came to Spurs, I'd probably start him over Kulusevski tomorrow.
No way. No, you wouldn't. You definitely would.
I think I would, genuinely. I think I would. I love Kulusevski, don't get me wrong, but Mbeumo is more of a goal threat, just plain and simple. And that's what we need at the moment. We haven't got a goal threat, and he is absolutely that. Every time he's played against Tottenham that I've watched him, he's run our defence ragged. He usually does score against Spurs, to be fair. He usually has a great game every time he plays us. I just think he's brilliant, yeah. And I think this season, with Toney being missing for the first few months, like you mentioned earlier, it's going to be his time to step out of that shadow and step into the spotlight.
Now it's time for Joshua to step into the spotlight, because you've got to talk about Mbeumo and our next player in a row, which will be good fun. So Joshua, again with Bryan Mbeumo, we spoke about Anthony not really dealing with it. We've seen the gold standard in Mohamed Salah. We're seeing someone like Bukayo Saka turn up as well. Out of the right wingers in the Premier League, do you reckon Bryan Mbeumo is in that top 5? And if so, how do you think he can improve his game this season? Because like Sukhi said earlier, he may not suit a possession style of play. He may suit a counter-attacking style of play, because that means he has less time on the ball. He has less time to think about what he wants to do. His decision making is a lot quicker as well. What do you think about Bryan Mbeumo so far? And is he in that top 5 bracket?
Yeah, it's always difficult. I think he's up there. It's definitely in the right. I mean, right midfielder is a difficult profile now. A couple years ago and heading into the season. But it's always difficult to make that step up to the top 6 side, because you have more of the ball. if you look at someone like Basuma shining for the first 2 games, we'll see a bigger kind of package of what he can do this season. But last year he struggled. But in Brighton, he was the best player in that Brighton team. Brentford do a lot of their great play comes through counter-attacking. They've actually scored Mbeumo and Wissa every game bar one. I think it's the last day of the season when they beat Manchester City. They scored every time that Ivan Toney hasn't been playing for them, and they've only lost 1 game also.
I never knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Which is a surprise. It's only 16 games or so, but they're prolific. But the system works. And when you look at someone like Jack Grealish, he was so impressive for Aston Villa. He was like a maverick. He'd run with the ball, he'd cut it on the right or the left. Goes to Manchester City and he's a bit robotic. You don't see that style. You become sort of system over flair. That's a lot of what Pep Guardiola has put into the Premier League.
Football's losing their mavericks right now. We're seeing that week in, week out.
Losing, you're being kind. I think it's lost. I'll be honest with you. But to win,
this is why I watch European football. You see players like Isco still balling out at Real Betis, which is quite nice to see. Vinicius Junior. You've seen that with Florian Wirtz at Bayern Leverkusen. But the Premier League is very system based as well. More manager focused than player focused, definitely.
But I think he could work. I think Spurs would be the best fit for him in terms of the new management there. But just traditionally, how Tottenham play and how Tottenham like their forwards to play. I think that'd be a wise move. But even Liverpool, because Liverpool high intensity football, as Grace said in the show with Jota, someone like that can slot in quite nicely. So I think he can make the step up. It's just about what the setup is. And at the time and the different pressures, of course, because whatever happens, if Brentford win and they be in a top 6 side, it's great. If they lose, if you're a Brentford fan, you care, but you can move on to the next game. It's different when you play for a big 6 side because we've vilified Anthony already in this podcast. If Mbeumo has a bad game, we're going to say the same thing. So it's a different fish.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's like comparing Lewis Hamilton to like Alex Albon. It was crazy pressure for any Formula One fans out there as well. And yeah, second player that we're focusing on this week as well. We are focusing on another winger, and it's a winger that I think we've said it before is every fan's favorite neutral player. Kaoru Mitoma. We are going back to Japan. Sorry, we're not talking about Endo here, Grace. But Joshua, talk to me about Kaoru Mitoma being one of the best dribblers statistically and officially in the Premier League as well. How have you been impressed with him after being at Brighton and Hove Albion for 1 season so far and really just turning up in these Premier League games in these amazing moments, dribbling past some of these players like he did against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and especially because Brighton and Hove Albion are going to be in European football this season for the first time in a century. What's your thoughts on Mitoma?
He's been fantastic, hasn't he? Especially this calendar year. January, February, March, unplayable. Everybody put him in your fantasy teams. I remember the goal he scored against Liverpool in the FA Cup, which was excellent last minute. And then even a goal on Saturday. There was a bit of a period at the end of the season where he went a bit quiet. He wasn't performing as consistently. He wasn't, showing up in the assists or the goals. And he started the season lightning, absolutely lightning. You talk about Mbeumo, he is, there's a debate to be had if he's the best player outside the top 6. Not many top 6 players can do what he did on the weekend, What a find once again from Brighton, what they're good at, making it work as well. It's easy to go pick a good youngster or someone that isn't from a European territory and bring them in and adapt. But to make them play so well, credit has to be given to Brighton, the backroom staff. They lose Graham Potter, they bring in De Zerbi, and he comes in. We're talking about Robert Sanchez gets removed, still comes in. Evan Ferguson. We can name 100 Brighton players that we didn't know a year ago have come through and are shining. Mitoma is probably the gem of them all. Because he has that end product and he's easy to watch in the eye and he's an enjoyable player.
Definitely is. It's so fun to watch and so enjoyable. Especially, unfortunately, when you play against him, sometimes it's just like painful just watching him because it's like a world-class player's coming. But Grace, earlier we were speaking about Mohamed Salah being the gold standard of wingers as well. How far away is Kaoru Mitoma in terms of being one of the best wingers in the Premier League? Is he nearly there? Is he quite far away? What's your thoughts, Grace?
I'd say he is nearly there. He does have this skillfulness and he is at every game. And bearing in mind, he's only like 25, 26. And Brighton is a really good, team to develop at. So I'm mates with the chairman. And when I spoke to them, he says...
You're what? Who? How?
So he saw me, the documentary I was on, and he invited me and my family to the box. And
no way.
Yeah, we met him, Paul Barber, lovely fella. His wife's a Scouser. Tell you a little funny story. So his wife's from Crosby, so that's just like in the centre of Liverpool. And basically, he said, like, what happens in the Champions League? Like, we want you to have a nice time here, so he invited us. So we were like, oh, where's your wife? We want to meet her. She was in the away end with all the fans. She
No
didn't
way.
want to be with all, like, there was, what was the mayor of London there, like John Barnes, like all people like that. It was like crazy, like it was that good. But what I'm saying about Brighton is that they bring these players on, and I feel like he is close to Mo Salah, because Mo at the minute he's very old and wise, but in terms of football, he has, you know, got back 3 seasons ago, he was on fire, but sometimes he's hit and miss, and he never used to be like that. Yeah, but I feel like Brighton would, it'd be a shame if they lost them, definitely. I'm scared for us playing Brighton in the Europa, like I actually am. They beat us 3 times last season.
That was a funny moment as well, especially with that replay that had to be played as well with Brighton and Liverpool, because I was like, no way is that the case. That was never a foul, and unfortunately it was, which is crazy as well. But no, that's a nice story. I know you've got some mad connections, Grace. It's insane.
Yes, I've got some lovely connections, and football's like that though. It's like you meet amazing people through it. You know, you have people that go, what is football about? It's only men kicking around with a football, but there's so much more to it, isn't it? Like with United, you know, you've got the biggest fan base ever. And then with Liverpool, that's why we clash a lot. It's like empowering for both.
Very tribalist, but it's like you said, when you meet some amazing people, wink wink Joshua, as you can see.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. It's all good. And obviously, Travis, you're going to talk to me about Kaoru Mitoma, and somehow you know his family to beat that story from Grace as well, because you somehow spent like 3 years in Japan before we met. So, yeah, Travis, talk to me about your fake story about Mitoma and how well he's been doing. And realistically speaking, he's probably one of the few kind of dribbling mavericks, because we don't see a lot of dribblers now in the Premier League, especially from the information that you pulled up earlier. Is that right, Travis?
I never told you about the time Mitoma pulled me out of a burning building, Hamza.
You never told me that. Nah, which burning building was it?
No, he's fantastic, isn't he? I think Joshua briefly mentioned it earlier how good he is, sort of on the eye. There's not many players, in my opinion, that pass the eye test so strongly, and have the stats to back it up as well. And he does certainly have both. Like you said, Hamza, he's so much fun to watch. His dribbling stats are insane. And like Joshua said as well, this calendar year with goal contributions, he's been killing it. And he's carried that into this season. I think a goal and 2 assists already. And the goal that he did get as well is a very early goal of the season contender. Probably the easiest assist of all time from Pervis Estupiñán as well for that one. But yeah, he's quality. I think he could be the next massive money Brighton sale, and you know they'll probably just replace him with someone else that they'll sell for 100 million 2 seasons later.
I still think Evan Ferguson will be sold before Kaoru Mitoma. That's just my opinion on that.
I'd agree. Yeah, I think he's going to go to Arsenal,
unfortunately. And now I'm going to speak to one of the best dribblers I've ever seen in a 5-a-side game. Talk about one of the best dribblers I've ever seen in the Premier League. Go on, Sukhi. Talk to us about how Kaoru Mitoma, basically, when you're seeing some of these purchases from Brighton and you see some of them being moved over straight away, you see McAllister move over, we've seen so many other players move from Brighton. Do you think if he stays at Brighton can actually build a proper European base team now as well? Because we've seen so many teams go in and out of Europe, Aston Villa, for example. But yeah, can Kaoru Mitoma become the poster boy Brighton and Hove Albion going forward in the future, not just another one of these sales? What do you think, Sukhi?
No, yeah, I was going to say, Hamz, don't make me blush about the dribbling highlights. They are on YouTube.
They are on YouTube. We'll send the link to Grace and to Joshua later.
That's sorry. Not to be booted or anything, but yeah, like you say though, I think he could be that poster boy for Brighton. I think when you look at their scouting network, someone needs to be purchasing that scouting network team, because the jobs that they're finding around the world is insane. And I think when you look at it, they're buying players for like $3, and then they're sending them off for like 100. I mean, there's just levels to that kind of sort of business, and that the squads they can spend it on the play, so they can spend mil, 20 mil, and buy kind of even youngster gems from like say from the Germany or the French league. But just for Matoma itself, and I think pretty much everything from everyone said in this kind of call is guys distant of what he studied at uni, because I want to see what he had in that essay to talk about dribbling and how he was going to do it, because whatever he said on that essay, he's making it a point of what he's doing on the pitch, right? He's displaying it. So if anyone's got any kind of links that he knows that he's got his dissertation anywhere or his essays where he was at uni, I'd love to see it, because the way he's applying that kind of theoretical knowledge onto the pitch is just outrageous. Yeah.
Apparently, Mitoma has actually published his thesis publicly as well. So I think we'll have to pull that up after the podcast and get Google Translate to translate from Japanese to English, which will be a good deciphering project for us, which would be quite nice. But yeah, great work, everyone, on Premier League's player focus for this week as well. Now we're going to finalize the podcast with our 3 games to watch across Europe. So again, we're doing our matchday previews. And in honor of Grace being here, we are going to be talking, unfortunately for me and for Joshua, about Newcastle versus Liverpool coming up this weekend. So that's our first Premier League game that we're going to be talking about. Joshua, take us away with Newcastle United and take us away in terms of how Eddie Howe's going to compete on 4 fronts, because Travis, Sukhi and I, we spoke about it in quite a big detail last week. I want to hear your thoughts on Newcastle United this season and how they're going to compete.
Yeah, I think they're still going to be up there for top 4. They have such a solid base of a side. Everybody, because Europe's been introduced, it's going to be a very difficult task. But it's not like last season where you have a sandwich Europe where it's Saturday, Wednesday, lead up to the World Cup. You will have games spread it out and a bit of Carabao Cups. And it's how he rotates and how he deals with the away games, which will be the problem in terms of coming back to playing the Premier League on the Sunday. But I think the Tonali signing makes sense. It's a healthy midfield. Willock's fantastic under Eddie Howe. Joelinton's good. They've got a goal scorer in Isak. And when you've got a goal scorer, that bails you out. And they've got another one in Wilson. And they've added with Barnes. I think they've got a nice, tidy squad to compete at all 4 fronts. Are they going to reach, the latter stages of Champions League? I mean, it's difficult. They're seeded 3rd, if I'm correct, or maybe 4th. So they're going to maybe have a difficult group to get out of. But if they were to get out of the group, then, that'd be fantastic for them. But they've shown in the first 2 games, everybody was predicting that Aston Villa would be decided to knock on the door for top 6, very excited under Emery. They blew them away. And then they were very respectable on Saturday, to go to the Etihad and limit, Manchester City. I know they only had 1 shot on target, I think, Newcastle. But look, City can blow anyone away at that ground. You've got to get to Real Madrid in that second leg of the Champions League. So they go there and they have a really tough fixture list on paper. Manchester City, Liverpool, starting at Villa. I think they've got someone difficult as well just before the international break. Top of my head, I think it's Brighton actually. Brighton away. So that's a hard start. And they could possibly, they've got 3 points already. And for them, maybe they look at the traditional top 6 teams. They're still as a free hit, but they're no mugs. And I think everybody has predicted them to kind of fall out and disappear. You got to look at the play eye then. Botman, Lewis Hall add a lot there from the left back position, replacing Dan Burn. They've got a good goalkeeper in Pope. They're not going away, in my opinion. They're not. I think they're going to have a good season.
Yeah, one of the key battles that we want to look at today is Mohamed Salah versus Dan Burn. And Travis, this is where you're going to come in as well, because we've spoken glowingly, uncharacteristically, I've spoken glowingly about Liverpool and Mohamed Salah, mostly because of Grace's appearance. So nicely done there, Grace. This happens once a year for us to talk about Liverpool in a positive light. But Travis, talk to me about Dan Burn. How can he actually prevent Mohamed Salah from having an easy ride, a goal or assist he can prevent against Mohamed Salah? Where can Dan Burn prevent that for Mohamed Salah?
A difficult one for him. I think he's going to have to be on, absolutely top form. He's had a really good run in the team under Eddie Howe, but I don't think anyone would call him an elite defender. I think if you were picking the perfect back 4 to try and stop Mo Salah, I don't think Dan Burn would be anywhere near it. I like him. I think he's a good defender, but I think he will struggle against Salah. He's so quick, Salah. And to be fair to Burn, he is deceptively quick for a guy of his size, but he hasn't got Salah pace. He's just got to try and stop him from using that pace. Don't give him the space to go into, maybe sort of. And that's difficulty with Salah. I was about to say maybe drop 5 yards deeper and let him have the ball. But if you let him have the ball, he'll pick a fantastic pass, like he did into Luis Diaz for the Chelsea game, first week of the season. So, I'm not a Premier League defender. I've got no advice for him, but I think he's just going to have a really, really strong game, keep his concentration, try to not really give him the space to operate, but also not really give him a chance to go past him. It's going to be a tough game for Dan Burn, tough game for Newcastle, I think, as well.
You could have just said elbow him in the face and get it over and done with. Take the
Yeah,
red
to
card
be
and move
fair,
on.
yeah, pull a what was it, Sergio Ramos in the final?
Pull a Sergio Ramos.
Go for one of them.
Over and done with would be crazy. But Grace, now this is your domain. This is where you're going to be talking about your beloved Liverpool Football Club, and especially because you were talking about your midfielders earlier as well. Because the key battle for me, in my opinion, is the midfield battle. You've got Bruno Guimaraes, you've got the new boy Sandro Tonali from AC Milan. They're going to be facing off against Alexis McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, as you pronounce it, Szoboszlai, as well, and potentially Curtis Jones in that midfield as well. How do you see this game going from a Liverpool point of view, and how do you see this midfield battle going, especially because, as we know, Liverpool, it's always been about heavy metal football, energy, all of that in between. What's your thoughts on this game so far, Grace?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, I am 50-50. I am not overly confident. I feel like Liverpool have to be on their top form because last season, it's actually quite funny. Newcastle obviously exceeding third in the Premier League, but we beat them at home and away, so we can play them. Obviously,
thank you for getting Nick Pope sent off, by the way. That was great for the Carabao Cup final.
What did you say, sorry?
Thanks for getting Nick Pope sent off in that game against Newcastle, because he couldn't play in the Carabao Cup final. So we'll always be appreciative of that.
Yeah, always. And then you won it then, didn't you? But yeah, I feel like up front, I am so confident. We've got 5 players there that if Klopp was to swap someone, I'd be fine with that. It's our midfield that we're worrying about. We've got Andy, Robbo and Trent, but I feel like they still make their mistakes defensive-wise, and they're not there in time. We need a midfielder. And will Enzo be that? Like, I really don't know with him. Obviously, McAllister, I don't know if you know, but his red card has been appealed.
Has it been rescinded?
Yeah, it's been rescinded.
No way. Joshua,
Yeah.
You went in the wrong room on the weekend. You should have banned them from rescinding that at all.
I'm there on Saturday. I'm gonna have a word.
Sort them out. They didn't give us the penalty against Spurs, and they gave the red card back to McAllister. No way.
No, it's not good stuff.
Yeah, do you know what I always say with VAR? Like, back in the day, it wasn't intense as how it is now, and now it is. Like, it really is. But it's like even little things. But I feel like with Liverpool, they need to, have a good form. Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, I'm not too sure if they're good enough. But it's just who we go with. Like, it is questionable for Liverpool. Like, who do we have? We don't have adu-donkor or Gini Wijnaldum who can come in and make a difference. We're not having that at the minute, because that Chelsea game, I went and literally 50 minutes in, I went, we're not going to score here. I just knew it.
Darwin Núñez nearly scored a banger at the end. If that went in, that would have been crazy.
Should have come on sooner, I think. I really think what Klopp's doing is like not playing him. I don't understand what he's going with the logic there, because I feel like put him on, I feel like he could make a difference, but it's all in Klopp's hands and you've got to have faith in him. But yeah, I would have loved to about 2 signings for him, because we've got like tough people that we're playing. So yeah, and Chelsea we've drew with them 7 times now. It's mad.
That's always a game you don't have to watch live. You can always watch it on Match of the Day or on YouTube. You'll not be a draw as well, and it saves you going in the future as well, Grace, because it saves you going away to London all the time.
I know.
It's true. It happens. It's like Man United and Wolves. It's always a 1-0. Like, I went to the game against Wolves 1-0. I was like, oh, for us this time, not for Wolves, which is great fun. But yeah, Sukhi, you're finishing off this one and you're starting the next one. So give us your score predictions and give us what your thoughts on the game will be for Newcastle versus Liverpool, and then I'll get you started on the next game for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think prediction-wise, I'm going to go for Newcastle win 3-1. And reasons for that is because St. James has now become a fortress. and it's virtually pretty much now becoming impossible to play there with all that pressure. It's like a cauldron now. And then when I look at all the teams in the Prem, I think Newcastle got the best midfield out of all the teams. It's very solid, it's very rigid, it's very structured.
Even more than Man City.
I mean, City are just a cheat code, right? So I mean, that's just
best team in the world as well, isn't it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to put them in their own bubble, but I think the next big kind of midfield trio you look at, I think that Tonali signing, like Joshua said, yeah, that's just like marquee. I think signing of the season, I reckon. But yeah, I'm gonna go for a 3-1 win.
Nicely done. And the next game we're talking about today is Villarreal versus FC Barcelona. And yeah, talking about FC Barcelona, Xavi ball after getting sent off first game of the season is crazy. We're going to be talking to Sukhi, obviously being someone who's been to Barcelona quite a few times, about how, realistically speaking, Barcelona can retain the La Liga title. They've had a few hit and misses so far this season. Coming up, pre-season wasn't the best for them. Where's the positive in this Barcelona side going into the La Liga season for you?
I think it's just embedding their youngsters. I think for Barcelona now, it's become to that point where you've got an amazing academy with top talent. Really, you've won the league last season. You can focus on now building up a team, especially with these youngsters coming through. But I think Barcelona, it's very. I always say this: they're just mid. They're just very mid in terms of whatever they do. It's just like everything's just very average, and it's kind of like, okay, Xavi's trying to play that kind of old school style Barcelona football, but it's just the players are just not really receptive to it. And I think the game has changed from what it was 10, 15 years ago, right? The way that Pep played in like 09, 10, 2010 days. But I think for Barcelona, their saving grace is watching their academy products coming through. And I think having the likes of Pedri, Gavi, and I want to butcher his name. I think it's Yamal.
Yeah,
I think
Yamal, 16-year-old.
Yeah, you can ask Travis. He cooked us in pre-season. I think that's a light a lighting star in their kind of dark days at the moment with their financial kind of issues. But I think for Barcelona, I think what we'll see this season is a lot more youngsters being embedded into the team, and I think that will be kind of really key for Xavi to kind of build up the next kind of dynasty for Barcelona. I think you'll start to see the shape of it coming up now this season.
Definitely. And Grace, I wanted to get your thoughts, obviously being from Barcelona as well. I didn't know that before the podcast, so it is a stroke of luck we are talking about Barcelona today. They have made one key signing after making 3 signings this summer. And I want to talk to you about İlkay Gündoğan and how big of a miss he will be for Man City, but how big of a gain it is to see him at Barcelona. And I want to know your thoughts on how well Gündoğan, Pedri, Frenkie de Jong will be for this Barcelona side going forward this season. What do you think, Grace?
Yeah, so I feel like it is obviously a miss for City. Do we know if City are doing the right thing? Because, week in, week out, when we do play City, it's always, good results for them. So it might just be like a loss for them that people might not remember as such. But for Barcelona, I feel like they've got a good form. And especially when they've been playing in pre-season and like the start, they've started off with a really, good start to the season. And with Villarreal, I feel like it's just hit and miss with them. I feel like the form, especially defensive wise, I think they need to sign a few more people, because at the end of the day, when I'm saying who we're going to put on to make a difference, Villarreal won't as such have that. And Barcelona, it's Real Madrid and Barcelona, but I feel like Barcelona could maybe top Real Madrid in time again and build that up. But yeah, I feel like it could be like 4-0 to Barcelona, thinking high of them.
It could be the case. And Joshua, I want to talk to you a bit about how Villarreal have lost quite a few big players this summer as well. Nicholas Jackson to Chelsea. They've lost Pau Torres to Aston Villa as well. Samuel Chukwueze to AC Milan. And they've lost Arnaut Danjuma to Everton as well. So big loss this summer for Villarreal. And like Grace said, with the money that they've got coming in, I think they've netted around 30-40 million euros. And for La Liga, that's quite a big sum of money as well. Where do you see Villarreal kind of competing in this game against Barcelona? Do you see them actually finding any key battles anywhere, or do you think it's going to be a straight win for Barcelona? What do you think?
I think Barcelona will win. It's been, I know the questions about Villarreal, but for Barca, they didn't win on opening day away from home, so they need to get that monkey off the back. Villarreal coming to after beating Mallorca, so that's a bit of confidence for them. But when you've lost so many players, it's about being compact. When Barcelona, Real Madrid, and you can say the likes of Atletico Madrid, if they're coming to town. But Villarreal, the last few seasons, They've been able to go deep into Europe 2 seasons ago, semi-final against Liverpool. But now you're looking at a new team. They've obviously lost their manager as well, who's for over a year, or coming up to a year in this particular fixture, just about being compact with the runners. Like the guys have said, Barcelona have a lot of mid players. They don't have that star quality. And Xavi's trying to implement a style that I wouldn't say necessarily is not suited to this squad of players, but the quality is just not there. So if you're able to just kind of find a way to stay with Barcelona as the game goes on, then you're fine. But they have to reinvest, and there's only 1 week left of the transfer window. Losing Nico Jackson and Chukwueze and Mbeumo, the players that you've mentioned, it's always going to be a big blow. But I've been around on those sides that they pop up now and again. They disappear. Pau Torres is another player they've obviously lost as well. So every couple of years, they have a new selection of players. So I wouldn't be too worried. But in this fixture, you expect Xavi's men to get the job done.
Definitely. And Travis, the boy that they've signed this summer for free from Stoke-on-Trent, who played in Blackburn Rovers, Ben Berreton-Diaz, the Chilean international, who's actually English, but he's got a Chilean. It's kind of like with Grace. She's got family in 2 different countries, so she could claim nationality on 2 different sides as well, which is crazy. So Ben Berreton-Diaz somehow became Chilean overnight and became a much better player, moving to Villarreal. Travis, talk to me. How can Ben Berreton-Diaz get the best out of Ronald Araujo, one of the best centre-backs in the world last season, not even in La Liga last season? Where do we see a key battle here? Is it more from the backline from Barcelona, or is it going to be a midfield battle for this one, Travis?
I think realistically, there's more chance of Barcelona's attackers causing problems for the Villarreal defence. But Berreton-Diaz is a dangerous player. I think you could say that he was probably the best player in the Championship last season.
Yeah.
And that's, although it's the second division in England, that's no mean feat. It's a really, really tough league, and you have to be a fantastic player to stand out, and especially to be the best player in the league. So yeah, undoubtedly it's a step up. He's gone from Millwall away last season to Barcelona, so it is a big step up. And it's
that's like Sukhi every Saturday to Sunday. Every week you go from Millwall to Barcelona. Isn't that right, Sukhi? South London to South Spain.
Has to be done.
Nah, it's good to see. But yeah, Travis, just finalize what you were going to say for us, please, on that.
Yeah, I think my sort of final thoughts on it, I think, like everyone, I'd mirror what everyone said. I think Barca are probably going to have a relatively easy day. I think in terms of the season on a whole, I don't think that they will be able to retain the title. I do think it's going to be Real Madrid's this season. Just think the way that Madrid have improved and the way that Barca have dropped off. I mean, going from Sergio Busquets to Oriol Romeu has got to be one of the biggest downgrades of any position that I've ever seen. So I think
Paul Romeu, catching strays from Travis here, former Southampton.
Come on, yeah. Busquets is one of the greatest players of all time, man. And Romeu was bang average for Southampton. Just very weird. Joshua touched on something that I wanted to have a quick mention of as well. I think it was a really good point when he said that the players that Barca have got at the moment are not good enough to play the system that Xavi wants to play. And the reason that Pep Guardiola Barcelona team from those years ago was so good was that they had, an elite system, but they had elite players in every position. They had Xavi, they had Iniesta, they had Messi, David Villa, they had all these fantastic players, and Barca just don't have that. So yeah, I think they'll have a relatively easy ride this weekend, but I think for the season as a whole, I don't think they'll be crowned champions again at the end.
Nah, nicely done. Good thoughts there, Travis. Good thoughts from everyone. Final game, we're going off to Italy, to Serie A, as it's back again, and I'm looking forward to seeing what controversial things come out of Serie A, as they always tend to do this season as well. We're going to AC Milan versus Torino, and Joshua, I'm starting with you. I'm talking about Rafael Leao being one of the best youngsters in European football, but lacking that consistency in front of goal for the national side as well. How do you rate Rafael Leao? Is he going to be one of the best players to watch in Europe this season, or is he going to be just here, there, a bit of everywhere? What do you think about Rafael Leao?
It's one of the most rawest talents in European football. A year ago, he was the player that was linked to replace maybe a Riyad Mahrez, and now City are going through the Doku route. In Serie A, to have a player that quality and that skill set, it's needed because it's kind of a trump card. It's not, you don't really see that much outside the top four. So for Milan, it balances the left side. Obviously, Giroud, they brought in Pulisic as well. But Leao is exciting. But consistency, as you said, Hamza, consistency is the problem. And if you're inconsistent in the Serie A league, in any way, they're not going to kick the byline and a lot of it's possession based in the middle. You're going to struggle to get out. But he still excites. He was disappointed in the champion. I know he was injured, and in the semi-final, he impressed a few times against Chelsea. But there is a player there. I personally think there's a player there. When you're that tall, you're that skillful. It's about coaching as well as the environment, right? At AC Milan, I think there was all the debates about the finance of his contract and, all haggling there. Now that's settled, we might get a more settled Rafael, but he's a name and a player that I think should excite all of us, because we still need to see those types of players in European football and world football. We can't have robots all the time. Unfortunately, that Pep's I blame Pep Guardiola for that. Put my name on
that. Definitely. Pep's just loving the system, not loving the individual as well. And Grace, I need to talk to you about a couple of individuals that have moved to AC Milan as well. We've had a few Premier League signings in Ruben Loftus-Cheek. We've seen Christian Pulisic move over there, both from Chelsea respectively. Realistically speaking, with AC Milan signing some of these players, you mentioned about Saudi Arabia, a lot of players going over to Saudi Arabia. Do you still think Serie A is a good plan B for Premier League players who can't really cut it in England? What do you think about that, Grace?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think with English football, the Premier League, it's probably one of the hardest to get into. We see it, when we have players coming over for us. Some people can't even speak English and they don't have that English discipline. So it can take seasons. So, for example, if there's been a red card, remember when Nunes headbutted the player?
Oh, yes, Yucky Namderson, his home debut as well. Fun times it was.
It was the debut, and we were like, oh my God, what are you doing? But yeah, I have a cousin, and he's went from Everton to Leeds to MK Dons, and then he's thinking of going over to Barcelona and doing European football. And I think European football is the way forward, because the rules, the relegations there, the VAR, I feel like it's more plans is better than the English football, and I feel like these players that have been signed from Chelsea and they'll grow with European football, because when they get in the Champions League or the Europa, they need to have that experience because it's completely different.
Exactly, like you said, they'd rather have the game time elsewhere than actually sitting on the bench. And when they get their opportunity in the Premier League, they're not cut up to standard as well. It's like what happened with Fikayo Tomori, moving from Chelsea all the way to AC Milan and then winning a Scudetto, winning a league in Italy as well. He had that experience to get that, as opposed to being a bench player at Chelsea as well. And Sukhi, for one of the tactical battles I want to challenge you to is basically, we're going to talk about Per Schurz, the new signing for Torino at centre-back as well. And we're really not sure how they're going to set up, because there's no Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I'm pretty sure they've only got Giroud as their main striker now. And they've got all these wingers. They've got Chukwueze from Villarreal, Leao, Christian Pulisic. They've got Junior Messias as well. Is that too much firepower for Torino to handle against AC Milan? Or could we see an upset perhaps? What do you think, Sukhi?
I think the way Torino played, and they played like this last season with a three at the back or a five, depending on which teams they play. I think they're going to frustrate AC Milan. Just like you said in that point, AC Milan is still trying to find out their team. And like Joshua said, where you've got Giroud and Leao playing as like the kind of definitely the front two, I think you're going to see a lot of changes just to kind of get the feelers in. And I think with Torino, they're going to frustrate him throughout the whole game for the full 90 minutes. So I think for me, my prediction was actually 1-1. Because I just haven't got a clue from AC Milan who's actually going to start on the left or the right. And
that
I think
makes two of us, so it's all good. It's going to be crazy seeing them this season.
When you watch Torino, they're very solid back, and I think they've emphasised on those solid three defenders at the back, where you've got two mobile kind of centre-backs on the left and the right, and then one kind of like your Harry Maguire in the middle-esque kind of hard head. But yeah, I think Torino are going to frustrate him, and I think it's like kind of what Joshua said about Leao trying to push on. The Italian league is very difficult like that because it's very defensive. So trying to get in between two lines of defense is it ain't easy for someone of that kind of flair. But at the same time, I think Torino, it's a perfect setup for them to get them on the counter attack if they can get a goal or sneak a win. So yeah, I've got to go for a 1-1.
Nicely done. And Travis, just to finalize as well, it is the first season since I believe 1999 where we will not see Zlatan Ibrahimovic start a league season anywhere in the world. So it's crazy to think how literally Zlatan Ibrahimovic has been playing football for as long as you've been alive. Do you know how mad that is, Travis?
Yeah, that's crazy. That would probably make him feel quite old if he saw that.
If you heard that as well, that's mad. I'm not going to assume that about Joshua and Grace because I don't want to be rude about your ages, but it's definitely older than Travis as well. So it's all good in that respect as well. But yeah, no more Zlatan Ibrahimovic in world football. That shows how literally time is changing and is not even going over for another payday in the USA or something. It's just going to be elsewhere. But what's your thoughts on AC Milan for this season? And then can they challenge with all the players that they've lost, Travis?
I think it's probably a very important season for AC Milan, really. I think last season, you look at the title defence, they ended up finishing fourth, 20 points off the eventual winners. Obviously, Napoli were monstrous and finished miles ahead of everybody, but to finish that far off the pace when they won the title the previous season was sort of undoubtedly disappointing. They have had a massive overhaul this season. Obviously, there's a couple of quite high-profile departures. Obviously, Tonali's gone to Newcastle. Ibrahimovic has retired, like you mentioned. So they have had to complete a bit of an overhaul of the squad. You mentioned earlier Loftus-Cheek coming in. They've signed a couple of other midfield as well. Yunus Musa, another one from Valencia.
Top player he is.
Yeah, US men's national team international. Looks a really good player.
He's a US men's national team with a London accent. Don't get that. Don't get that. He chose the wrong nationality.
Weird combo. But yeah, I think it could be sort of make or break for Pioli. I think the new players need to settle in, and they need to settle in quickly, especially the forward players, Pulisic and Chukwueze, who were mentioned earlier. They need to replace the goal scoring burden that has been lost essentially by Ibrahimovic. They've lost a couple of other attackers as well. Rebic is gone. They've loaned out Charles de Ketelaere as well. So yeah, these players need to settle in quickly, and they need to get to grips with Pioli's system quickly, or else it could be another disappointing season for them. But they have signed a few very good players, so if they do gel quickly, you never know, they could challenge.
Definitely. It's going to be a fun season for AC Milan and us to watch it as a neutral as well, which is great. But yeah, that was fantastic, everyone. Great job there with our matchday previews as well. I love the variety of topics to talk about as always, which is great. And now we are at the end of the podcast, and this is where we say goodbye to Joshua and to Grace as well, and to obviously everyone listening. But before we say goodbye to everyone, I just want to get Josh and Grace's thoughts on this prediction. Who's finishing higher this season? Liverpool, Newcastle, and Man United out of the three. Let's see who's finishing higher out of the three. Obviously, Travis and Sukhi, you can play along as well, because we know Spurs are still finishing ninth, but it's all good.
I'll let Grace go first, please.
Okay. So United, Newcastle, and Liverpool.
Yeah.
I'd say United bottom. There's always a mix-up that happens, so I don't think they'll be confident to get the top four this time. They were lucky. Of course, I say Liverpool because I'm still not confident. Like this season, feel like maybe we could rebuild the season, and then next season, like we're on top of City by when we won the league and 25 points ahead. And then I'd say Newcastle because, as we've been speaking about it, what the manager's done, what the club's done as a whole, they've brought amazing people on, and yeah, it's a good form of a team.
I get that as well. I think that Klopp factor will come into Liverpool this season as well, which will be great for Liverpool football as well. Joshua, agree or disagree? What's your top three in terms of?
I think United will be bottom.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as it stands, though, I think there's some movement in the window, and I think a lot depends on Man United's Højlund.
Yeah.
The last two games, somehow we've created, only Brighton created more opportunities than us. I don't know how the hell that's happened.
Yeah.
The underlying numbers are good. So I think Højlund is a striker that gets goals. Then I think I'll put United first, I'll be honest with you. But right now, as it stands, I have to be honest, no, I think I'll put United below. I'd say Newcastle just above us. Although I think they'll be very settled and they're very competitive. It's Liverpool's firepower Tottenham, Manchester United, Chelsea, even Arsenal to a certain degree, all struggle for goals. But Liverpool, you're going to get a goal from Diaz or Jota or Salah. Nunez might come off the bench. McAllister might chip in. Szoboszlai can, ping one in. Goals always get you points. If Fernandes and Rashford gets that header on Saturday, we probably don't lose the game. I'm not saying we're going to win the game, we don't lose the game. Goals.
Anthony scores that one-on-one chance instead of hitting the post.
Yeah, there you go. It's such an obvious thing, but it changes everything. Everybody becomes nervous. It's a different game automatically. I mean, you've got someone like Mohamed Salah who's just a goal magnet, goal assist magnet. You're going to always be thereabouts. Liverpool were dreadful last season, but nearly got top 4 because they had someone like that in their ranks. So I always think you have to trust him and Jurgen Klopp. So that's why I'd go for Liverpool above Manchester United. As it stands, I'll come back on this pod and later in the season I'll flip that. But as it stands, yes, Liverpool. I predict, unfortunately.
Nicely done. I'm going to go for Newcastle bottom. I think Champions League will impact and hinder their season. Then I'm going to go for Liverpool, and then I'm going to go for Manchester United. I have to believe, because if I don't believe, it's not going to be fun. And I'm just glad that this week, of all weeks, we got rid of MG11 from our club. He who shall not be named at all, because we don't like him at all. Yeah, we won't mention him at all. But yeah, I'm going to believe in Manchester United, even though I'm looking sad and sour, because last season I did the same thing and we finished in the top 4. So I was quite happy with that, which is not too bad. And Sukhi, Travis, one question for you, yes or no answer with Tottenham Hotspur. The Harry Kane curse has left Tottenham Hotspur. Is this now time for Tottenham Hotspur to win a trophy under Ange Postecoglou? No theory, no yes or no, none of that. Just yes or no. So, Travis, are you going to win a trophy this season under Ange Postecoglou? Yes or no?
Yes.
Oi, that's what I like to hear. Go on, Travis. And Sukhi, yes or no?
I'm going to back Travis's wild statement, so yes.
Not because Spurs are good, because they've got to back Travis. I see how it is. Nah, that's crazy. That's really good. And it's been a really, really good podcast today. And I'm loving this new format. And I've loved having these 2 amazing guests that we've had on. To Joshua, wishing you all the best in this season as well. Going into 9 years of Coventry this season, which is insane. And like I said, we may be seeing you on our screens and on our radios over the season as it goes on, which would be great. So nicely done there, Joshua. And do you have any social medias you wanted to plug, or anything you wanted to plug before we wrap up?
Just Twitter, J_donkor. So that's DONKOR, and you'll find all my tweets where games I go to and upcoming games and all those types of things.
And the passcode to the VAR locker room in Stockley Park as well, just so we can get in there.
They've got a new building now, so I don't think my pass will get me in, unfortunately. Oh, no. I'll try and get a kit and mingle in the best I can and get.
We'll do like one of those imposter videos that you see on like Beta Squad, wearing like the fake McDonald's outfit, fake referee outfit going into there. It'll be good. And Grace, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. You've been amazing. And I don't normally say that about Liverpool fans, but you actually have, which has been great to have you on as well. And keep up the great work you've been doing with men's mental health. Sometimes it feels like our podcast is kind of alone when we're talking about men's mental health within football. So great to see the work that you're doing. And anything you want to plug and shout out to our listeners as well, the time is yours, Grace.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you and meeting you, and it's always great to talk about football. It's like being with your mates in the pub. But yeah, I use LinkedIn quite a lot. That's like quite my platform, because social media I'm not fussed on. But yeah, it's Matchday Gab. You can look at podcasts there. I also do another podcast called LFC Transfer Room. That's every Sunday at 7:30. So got like a big following on that now. And then I'm actually in London on Monday because I'm filming for the football show. I can't really say much, but I'm excited for that, because this will be my first thing properly live on telly where I'm able to speak. And yeah, so yeah, Grace X Merritt on Twitter. Quite funny on Twitter, to be fair. But yeah, that's fine.
Nicely done. And this podcast obviously goes out on Friday this week. So by Monday, we'll be able to see what the big reveal is. So Grace, nicely done, and all the best in the future, which will be great. Travis and Sukhi, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. As always, you are the two nicest Spurs fans I've ever seen. So thank you for not rubbing it in this week and keeping it civil. I know after the podcast you'll be messaging me memes of Man United losing, but it is what it is, which is great fun. But Sukhi, pleasure as always, my friend. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. And Travis, as always, a pleasure. And we've got a busy week ahead of us in terms of getting this foot golf video out. And everyone who's listening, and for you guys watching as well, we'll send you our foot golf videos if you haven't seen them already on our social medias, which is great fun. But yeah, everyone, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much all for your time. Take care, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.
See you later.